Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. And, you know, we love to bring you updates about things that are happening in the community. A lot of these things I think people don't always know about. Got some hidden gems. One of those that we're going to talk a little bit about is this Chauvin Sculpture Garden as we welcome in Dr. Gary LaFleur. Dr. LaFleur, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right. We appreciate it. Doc, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind, and a little bit about how this came to be.
Okay. My name's Gary LaFleur, and, you know, sort of like my day job is with the Department of Biological Sciences. I'm a scientist and teacher at Nichols, but right. I am also the coordinator for the Chauvin Sculpture Garden. And the Chauvin Sculpture Garden, many people have been there, and yet many people have not. It's kind of a secret that you find when you go down to Chauvin.
Right.
And the story behind it is Kenny Hill is the artist who made the garden. And that's kind of like the first lesson that we want people to know. Okay. But he left the garden in the year 2000, and Nichols has been taking care of the garden ever since.
Wow. And you can see by some of these pictures how unique and how eclectic this garden really is.
Yeah, it's hard to describe. You know, you kind of tell people, yeah, it's full of sculptures, and we find that they don't really get it until they visit the garden. And we almost do that on purpose, because you don't want to just show people pictures of this incredible place. You want them to visit it so that they can experience it by walking through it. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in life that we can talk to about that, right? We can tell somebody what our experience is. We can show them a picture, truly worth 1,000 words. But to get a feel for what that's like, you've really got to be there. Can you tell us where it's located down in Chauvin?
Okay, that's at 5337 Bayou Side Drive.
Okay.
And if you're familiar with going down Highway 56, it's just across the bayou from Wolf's Pharmacy.
Oh,
right. So for locals, that means you cross the bayou at Marty J's. You cross the bayou at the Chevron station over there at Marty J's. That's when you cross over, and it's about 3 miles down from Marty J's on the other side of the bayou.
Yeah. And were you able to know Mr. Hill and some of the things that he was thinking about in as much as when that came to be and how the garden came to be?
Well, because I'm in biology, I was traveling down to LumCon pretty often. Right. And in 1999, I walked into Kenny Hill's garden just because I was curious. And Kenny still lived there at that time. So I got to see Kenny.
Oh, wow.
He looked at me from his house, and he didn't really want to visit with me. So I saw him. He kind of gave me permission. Okay, you can walk through the garden. So I can't say that I know him, but there's several neighbors of the garden, like Deborah Cunningham and Andrew Cuneo. They live close to the garden, and they often tell people about what it was like watching Kenny put up the garden. And we still have people who can tell stories about him. So it's pretty neat to visit.
Well, it's pretty unique. They can tell those stories, and it's also very unique that we can kind of show that garden. And you guys maintain that. So I've got to imagine that it's something that's a part of some of your Nichols courses, as you showed some of those students out there really kind of making sure that y'all are maintaining the grounds and making it and keeping it as beautiful as possible.
That's right. You know, there's a couple different ways that we use that. We have an art department. The art department likes to bring students out there to show them what you could call visionary art, untrained art, or folk art. It's a place that people come from around the world to see folk art. But we also use it as a venue for service learning. And so that's why even biology students from geomatics, they go out there as a way to give back to the community. It's a great place to do that. And while they're there, they learn about a traditional fishing community. So there's really a lot to learn from Chauvin, not just the Chauvin Sculpture Garden, but what it's like to be in a town that's kind of struggling with coastal land loss. There's many lessons to learn by visiting Chauvin.
Yeah, and such a unique group of people. I got to tell you, I've been very honored to work down there. And back when I was in college, I was working through the YMCA, and I was down in Chauvin every day during the summer, running the pools down there, the Smithridge Gym pool as well as the Chauvin pool. And they're such a unique people, in as much as so very loving, so very giving, but at the same time, their culture is changing, because as these wetlands change and this coastal erosion takes place, they're kind of losing their ability, and the fisheries are changing. It's really changing their way of life down there as well.
Yeah, I agree. And those lessons are not in our textbooks. And yet I feel like students that are coming through Nichols, we want them to be exposed to those lessons. It's a very unique setting. Even, there's other places in Louisiana that are sort of similar, but it's very unique. You can go to Big New Orleans and Big Baton Rouge and Big Lafayette and not get any understanding of what it's like to live on the coast of Louisiana. So Chauvin is awesome for that.
Yeah, and just that those cultures and that living off the water and truly living off of the land and the waters that make such a big difference, and so close to some of those salt water, right? We've got that that brackish water, and we have some fresh water near there, but we see that salt water and what it does and how it does things. It's really exciting. So Aaron, put that picture up one more time. I want people to be able to know they can go down about 3 miles down past on Bayou Side Drive, right across the bayou from where Wolf's Pharmacy would be on Highway 56. Great description of that, by the way, Dr. LaFleur. You can go and see the Chauvin Sculpture Garden and go and check it out. It's maintained by a lot of the programs and 2 of the different programs through Nichols, and we're excited about that. Dr. LaFleur, we appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for joining us, and we thank you for all that y'all are doing at Nichols to educate our communities.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Chauvin. Thanks.
All right, very good. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more Bayou time when we continue.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. And, we have lots of things that exist in our community. A lot of those things that have been here for many, many years, they've changed some. But down the bayou, I can tell you one of the things that I remember most is about Blessing of the Fleet. And it's one of those things that where it's done in Chauvin at St. Joseph Church, and they've been coordinating that, and the Shrimpers have been coordinating that for many, many years. We're very glad to have with us Dr. Gary LaFleur. Dr. LaFleur, thank you again for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. I like to talk about things that are going on in Chauvin. So thanks for the invitation. Absolutely.
We appreciate it. And of course, your job over at Nichols, you spend a lot of time at Nichols, you spend a lot of time down through Chauvin, a lot of time at Lumcon, and just really making sure that we're staying connected with what's happening in our communities, right?
That's right. My, my first priority at Nichols is with the biology department, but I'm also the coordinator of the Chauvin Sculpture Garden. And so that helps me get to the coast, get to Chauvin, get to Cocodrie, and there's a whole lot to learn down there. So, what's coming up this weekend is an opportunity for us to invite people to this Nichols facility to learn about it, but also to learn about what it's like to be living in a traditional fishing community.
Wow, I love it. Tell us a little bit about your experience. Can you tell me when you first remembered the first blessings of the fleet, or boat blessing?
Well, we've been taking care of the Chauvin Sculpture Garden since the year 2000.
Right.
And our first, kind of like our first mission there was, okay, we want to bring people to the garden. We want to show off the art of the garden. And then we realized, every year in April, there's a beautiful boat blessing that happens right more or less at our front doorstep on Bayou Petit Caillou.
Correct.
And so we realized okay, we need to kill two birds with one stone. Bring people to the garden to show them the art of the garden, but to show them this beautiful ritual that takes place, traditional heritage that you just can't see in big cities in Louisiana. And so we love showing off both sides of that.
Right.
And, we've been doing that for about 15 years now. And even though we do not necessarily host the blessing of the fleet, that's
right.
through St. Joseph's Church and the Shrimpers, we offer a beautiful venue for students, faculty, community members. It's free. It's a great place to see the blessing.
Right. And again, you get a chance to really see something so very unique as it relates to the Chauvin Sculpture Garden there down in Chauvin, again, about 3 miles down. It's on Bayou Side Drive. If you kind of, as you mentioned, cross over at Marty J's, turn right there on Bayou Side Drive, go down about 3 miles. Give that address again, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
please.
That's 5337 Bayou Side Drive.
5337 Bayou Side Drive for those people that can only exist through their GPS. But you go down there, you're not going to miss the garden. Right about 3 miles past the bridge, you're not going to miss the garden. You can look across and see that Wolf Pharmacy is right there on the other side of you, and you're in the right place. But again, it brings together some culture that's been there for many years with the boat blessing, and something that's so very unique in that sculpture right there in Chauvin that, quite frankly, maybe doesn't look like it fits, but art and sculpture can go anywhere.
I agree. People, it's kind of a head scratcher. People think, well, why is this here? It's here because it's folk art. Kenny Hill made that site, and he didn't necessarily explain it to anyone. So, it's been announced as being the 12th most amazing sculpture garden on earth by one survey crew.
Wow.
And so we take advantage of the critical mass of people being interested in the boat blessing to say, hey, come see the sculpture garden on the same day. And so we invite students and faculty that are doing art. We invite them to come to the garden too. And so we have artists that are showing off that day. So you can see other folk artists like Dottie Ratliff. This is one of her pieces.
Right.
There's a lot to see in coastal Louisiana that you don't see unless you visit. So this is by Dennis Saporsky. A lot of people recognize the White House from Last Island.
Right.
It's not there anymore, but people still remember it in art. And so on that day, at the climax of the day is when the boats pass. But there's art and music and food and the sculpture garden. So there's many things to experience on this Sunday coming up.
Right. And speaking about that schedule, run through that real quickly if you don't mind, because it's going to go right near the art garden.
Right. So at 10 o'clock, that's when we kind of open our picnic. Everybody's invited. There's no cost to enter. And around 12, we do what we call the garden toast. That ends up being where we talk about what's going on this year. And much of what we're talking about is Greg Elliott is the person restoring the art of the garden. He'll be there. He can explain how he's repairing since Hurricane Ida.
Right.
And a little bit after that is when the boats pass. And that ends up being the climax of the day. Everybody's waving to family members, and there's music, and you never know what you're going to see on the boats. And there's big shrimp boats pass, but also the smaller boats pass. And it's a beautiful climax. And kind of in between, we have music. And this year we have something special. We have what's called a cultural conversation. That happens at 2 p.m.
Right.
Where we're going to talk to locals from Chauvin and Montague. We're going to talk to Deborah Cunningham and Captain Sam LaBeouf about the history of living on the coast. So that'll be something to stick around for. And then it all kind of shuts down around 3 or 4 o'clock.
Right. But a wonderful day is planned. And again, it's bringing together some beautiful art, some beautiful culture down in Chauvin. And again, it's free for the public. You want to come out at 10 o'clock and kind of find out a little bit more about the history, find out about who's kind of preserving the garden and what's happening. 12 o'clock, again, another special discussion. And then about 12:30 when the boats are passing for the blessing of the fleet. Very good. Well, Dr. LaFleur, thank you again for joining us. We very much appreciate it. Thanks for what you do for Nichols and what you're doing down the culture in Chauvin. We appreciate it.
Okay, we look forward to seeing y'all on the banks of Bayou Lil Collier. Come join our celebration. We want to see you.
All right, very good. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.